Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Money and the Law. My FM 101.3 and Hollis and Cable Access TV. We have been on a bit of a sabbatical.
Yes, we
but
have.
But now we are back, and I take full responsibility for said sabbatical.
Don't take not full. I'll take some responsibility. I wasn't around.
Well, that's just because you took advantage of the fact that I said well, I'm not going to be there, and you're like, all right. So we're back. This is Jay Marsden from the Marsden Law Group. I'm John Drohan from Made Effort Financial, and we are your humble servants here on Money and the Law, talking to you about all things money and all things legal.
Absolutely.
All the things that you want to learn about, you want to talk about, but you may be afraid to ask about, and we're here to just alleviate those.
It's the best way to hear an attorney talk to you, and it's not costing you
without
any
having
money.
to pay
any money.
$800 an hour.
It's not eight. It's close. Not eight.
Depends on the case.
Depends on the client. Depends on the client. Sometimes it's more. Sometimes it's less.
Sometimes
it's more.
Right?
That's right. That's right.
Mr. Gotti, I'm afraid the fees have gone up.
You seem to be flush with cash. Let me just tell you what the
we do take cash.
Yep, that's right. First question. That's right.
We do
that's right.
take cash.
That's question. That's why the net worth question is the first one on the intake sheet. That's right.
That's awful. That's shameful. You know, but and he says that, right? My partner says, oh yeah, it's about the net worth, blah, blah. He'll take anybody that walks in the door and help them out because he is that kind of guy. Because right? That's how you guys roll.
We are not.
Somebody needs. You're not going to throw somebody out on the street because maybe they don't have the same amount of money.
I will say that in defense of ourselves, I've said to people in the past who have sort of struggled a little bit, I said, look, first things first. It's more important. Let's get it done so we solve a problem. Let's solve your problem first. We'll worry about the other stuff afterwards. Most importantly, let's solve your problem.
See, and then and that puts people at ease. Right. They know, and then
we'll put you on a nice payment plan, 19-20% on the money. It's not a credit card, but it's unsecured debt, so we got to do something.
It's like you solve their problem, and then they later in turn solve your problem.
That's right.
All right.
So it's not a school loan. But you did get educated. You did get educated. That's right.
It's definitely not a school loan.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. Because no one would go to college if that was the way the school loans operated.
That's true. How you been? Where you been? What's been going on?
So I've been away. We were away for last week. We had a bust out. Did some time in Cape Cod. Visited my mother
Janet.
and everybody was in town. My sister's fiance.
Nice.
My brother. There was the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah. Nice.
And then the week prior, I forget. This is the thing, right? People remember. Like I talked to my father-in-law, and he'll remember what he was doing in like 1946. On January 11th, right?
During the war.
Yeah, right. Oh yeah. And then I was wearing a blue shirt that day, and where I can't remember what I did 2 Wednesdays ago.
Yeah.
So
that comes with age.
So it comes with I always
age and scotch. Probably
it's like my memory is full. I'm like an old computer, right? I'm like an old one of those ones that when you bought that thing 15 years ago,
super fast.
Look at this thing.
Lightning
this is so
quick.
Fast.
This is
like 100 mega gigs or what, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and sure enough, here I am.
And here you are. I got to turn you off and turn you on every once in a while, plug you in, plug you out to get you to move a little bit. That's right.
Look at that little circle wheel rainbow thing.
Yep, that's right.
That's
right.
You look at
the black screen of death.
Yeah, you look at my eyes, and that's what you see, right? So, but it's been good. How about you? You been spending any time downrange?
No, actually, I have not been south of the bridge. I actually was away on a conference, work conference last week.
So you're pooped up
down in Music City, Nashville. Fantastic, great 5 days. My never-ending, undying love for live music. And so if you want to go see live music, that's the place to go. So
you were not disappointed?
Well, here's the disappointment. The disappointment was it was legit work conference. I'm not putting air quotes around it because that's what everybody does when they ask me about it. How was your quote work conference? It was a work conference, so it was lots of time in a windowless, basically room, if you will, just working away. And then at night they'd release you to go do some things, and you want to go do some things, which is great, but you're not necessarily swinging from the chandeliers because tomorrow is going to be greeted with another 8 or 9 hours in the windowless room. And I've done this. There's nothing worse than sitting in that room when you had a little bit of a bigger night than you planned. So there was some behaving.
That's not the room you want to be sitting in.
No. There was some behaving, and so a great time, great first run at it, to kind of get the lay of the land. And I think I definitely would consider going back.
So, and this was to teach you to be a better lawyer. Is that it? Is that
It was to teach me to run my firm better, run the firm better, and how to do better marketing at the firm.
It's hard to think that your firm could run any smoother than it
Always,
already does.
always room
There's
for
always
improvement.
room.
We're always
That's
looking
right,
for
that's right.
improvement.
You know what?
Kaizen,
You're like
constant incremental
you're
change.
You're like Michael Jordan. You're like the Michael Jordan of lawyers. You're like the Tiger Woods of
Michael
lawyers.
Jordan of jurists.
Yeah,
Yep,
there
yep,
you go. That
yep.
you're always seeking improvement. That's what I like about you.
Yeah, so it was fun. So it was a good time, great trip, always fun. But I always struggle with the July. This is a quarterly trip that we do. I always struggle with the July one because I know it's costing me time on the Cape, and it's every year.
A quarterly. That's
struggle.
That's
I struggle.
I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot when you say, "Oh, we're just going to do it quarterly," until it happens.
Yeah.
Until the quarters happen, and you're like, "Is it the quarter again?"
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Then I have another 90
And
days
it's
gone
summer,
by.
right?
Yes,
And it's the
yes,
summertime.
Yes.
I will say this. I did have a Riley Marsden sighting the other day.
Yes, yes.
I got to see your oldest daughter. We were walking in and out of the supermarket, and I recognized her. Of course, your children are wonderful. They always make a fuss over me. I'm like, Marsden, and she looks at me and she's like, oh, Mr. Drohan. It was good to see her.
Yeah, she was back on a double secret cover. She did surprise you that she let you see her because she usually comes back like under the cover of darkness and sneaks in, sneaks out.
Well, that's what I said. I said, aren't you supposed to be on Cape Cod right now?
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm heading back soon.
Yeah,
So,
she's funny. So yeah, they're working on there for the summer, having a good old time. Good old time.
It's tough.
So
It's tough being them.
Yeah.
Christian, you don't have to speak because I know that you don't ever speak. Are you having a good summer? Christian gives the thumbs up. One thumbs up. So
all right.
Christian, you haven't gotten married since the last time we talked. Any significant events we need to discuss in your financial or estate plan? Okay. All right.
still
good.
not a convicted felon. That's
No,
great. That's great.
I mean,
That's good.
still not,
Still,
which is
still,
awesome.
yeah,
That is awesome.
That's
And
good lawyering.
a lot of people don't really give people credit for that. Like, good job on not being a
Yeah,
convicted felon.
yeah.
Still.
Easy
right?
to fall into that trap. You got to watch out for it. Yeah,
Easy.
that's right.
Every time you walk by a convenience store, you're like, God, should I rob this thing
I
a
gotta
second
tell you,
time?
I will tell you though, as we move into the weather portion of this thing, if we don't get some sunlight pretty soon, I might become a felon.
You could become a
come
convicted felon.
on, are you kidding me? Good Lord,
Yeah,
unbelievable.
It's been rough.
I woke up this morning. I'm like, what? Like, I'm expecting it to be 5 a.m. You wake up, you're like, oh, it's dark and gray and gloomy. I must be just getting the beginning of sunlight.
Yeah.
Oh no,
it's 7:30.
Exactly right. I'm like, oh, fantastic, right? Good Lord.
Yeah,
man.
I mean, and I'm sure it's a common discussion amongst everybody. Like, can you in any of your 53 years remember a July like this?
You know what's funny? A long, long time ago, when I swung a hammer for a living, I worked one summer, and it was. Some people remember this. It was a crazy summer where every Monday, without fail, the sun came up, and it was 85 Monday through Friday.
Right.
And at 5 o'clock every Friday, the clouds rolled
Right.
in, and it
And you're like,
rained
"What?"
every weekend. Right.
Right.
And
So the guy you're working for was psyched. Right?
well, he's thrilled, right? And of course, I'm working outside all day, and I'm putting on like layers and layers of sunscreen, and I'm about as pasty white Irish as they come, right? And I'm rocking this, tan.
you're tan.
I'm absolutely tan.
You're tan.
And everybody I know is like the color of glue, right? And they're like, "What is going on?" This was probably, I don't know, it's gonna be 30 years ago, but it always stuck out in my mind. I remember I was joking every weekend. It was like rain, 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 and then Monday morning, right on time, you could set your watch by it. The sun came up, and it was 85 and sunny, and everybody was losing their minds.
I mean, what I don't like about it is the
Indoor drinking.
I mean, indoor drinking is. I mean, it's hard. It's harder, right? The other night, on the dinner menu, we called it outside pasta, just to kind of give right.
Just to give everybody hope.
Yeah, some outside pasta. And sure enough, we ended up eating it inside, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Was it any different than inside or out? No, there's no difference. But we're having it's outside pasta now because it's better.
I put up this tremendous pergola down the Cape to keep the sun off me, and it's like, that's great, but rain just flies
Did
through
you just
the
throw
thing.
a tarp over it? Yeah.
I might as well throw a blue tarp up, right?
Throw a
Yeah,
tarp
yeah,
over it. Yeah.
yeah.
Let's tarp that
Unbelievable.
up.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what's on your mind?
So on my
What are we talking today? What are we talking about today?
It's funny you should ask. And so I'm doing this for you. So
Oh, boy. Here we
I'm
go.
perusing through some material, and I come across this, and I said, what is my friend going to want to talk about today? And I think, what does he love talking about more than anything on God's green earth? And that is estate planning, because that's kind of your thing,
It's
right?
one of my favorites. It is one of my favorites.
It is one of your favorite subjects.
Yeah.
So I
Wife, children, Cape Cod, estate planning. in that order.
I mean, what about Key West? There's
Oh, that's in there too, but I'm just right now. For right now. Yeah. Yeah.
So I came across an article and said it was the 10 mistakes that you could make, or 10 things that you could overlook while you're, and I even wrote them down, while you're when you're thinking about or making your estate plan. So there's 10 kind of pitfalls that you could find yourself in, and one of them I'm particularly interested in, and there's one that I want. I if we were going to expand on anything, it would be number.
Oh, don't say it. We'll get to it.
No, I'm not going to say it.
Tell us the number.
I'm not going to say it. It is number 4 on the list.
Number 4. Stay tuned for number 4.
Number 4.
Which order are we doing these in? Are we doing 1 to 10? Are we doing 10 to 1? What are we doing?
There's no. There's nothing more important than those. But I think we do need to hit them all.
All right.
We need to review them all. But if we can circle back on anything, I'd like to go back to number 4. And we will do that right after we
number
take
4,
this,
everybody.
right
number
after
4.
This quick break. Number 4.
That's how they do it, right?
That's right. The great Lou Gehrig was number 4, right?
So Bobby Orr, great Bobby Orr.
Bobby Orr was number 4. All right. So number 4. Everybody keep that in your mind. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back in about 4 minutes. No, I think it's less than that.
No, less than that.
We'll be right back.
And we're back. Money in the Law, MyFM 101.3. Jay Marsden with the Marsden Law Group. John Drohan, Main Effort Financial, both located in the booming downtown metropolis of Holliston, Massachusetts. That's like an exit. Is that an exit off of anything or no?
It's funny. I was driving on the New Jersey Turnpike this past
That's
weekend.
all exits, yeah.
And so we should get some kind of an exit. We're exit. What are we? I'm
They changed the exits. They changed the exits. I don't even know what exit I am.
Yeah, and there's nothing more maddening than that.
No.
And do you know why they did that?
I do know. It makes absolutely no sense to me.
Yeah, it's the mile, because it equated with the mile marker. Guess where they didn't do that?
Vermont.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about Vermont. But what I do know, so there's a couple other states that have probably a few more people than we have.
Yeah.
So you know where they didn't do that? They didn't do it in New York.
Wow.
They didn't do it in New Jersey. They didn't do it in Connecticut. You know why? Because they're like, why are we going to change? Why? You think that they're going to put mile markers on the New Jersey Turnpike? The exits are like 20 miles apart.
Yeah.
Like, do you think people care? They're like, no, I'm off exit 5 on the New Jersey Turnpike.
That's right.
Hey, you know what the next exit is? Take a guess. It's 6.
Yeah, that's right.
And
this is the part that blows my mind. I'm zipping down the highway and I'm like, wait, exit 72 jumps down to 53, which jumps up to 29, which jumps up to 30. It's like the new math when you were a kid.
The first place I saw it was on Cape Cod.
Yeah.
So I'm on Cape Cod and I'm like, and all my, and I'm kind of zoning out. I'm like, oh no, did I miss a turn? So where
exit 39? Did they make Cape Cod longer?
Where
did they
could I be?
Did they extend Cape Cod? Am I missing something? Was there a build out over the winter?
In the Twilight Zone, right?
No, it was like everybody else was doing work on their place in COVID, right? You figure maybe the Cape did the same. Maybe it's twice as long as it was. I don't know.
Yeah, we put an addition on.
That's right. We put an addition on Cape Cod. We figured to make it was help spread it out. Everybody, COVID, move around.
I mean, the water's coming in on one side, maybe the other side. We can fix it.
Yeah. So, this Cape Cod edition brought to you by any builders want to sponsor that. Let us know.
Yeah,
that's right.
The builders out there, you guys.
They're not busy.
The ones that are sitting around doing nothing.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. By the way, return my calls, please.
Yeah, yeah. Return my calls. Just return his calls because I'm not even going to call you.
All right, so what are we talking about? You get 10 things, 10 estate planning pitfalls that we want to avoid.
Yeah, so some mistakes that you want to avoid. All right, so we're going to go with some of the beginning. The first couple are kind of they're real, but
low hanging fruit.
Well, they're low hanging fruit, and we've talked about them 100 times on the show. First one is not having a real plan. Right? So no real plan. So you think you have an estate plan, or you back when you were 22, just getting out of the Army, you said, oh yeah, they made me make a will, so I got a will, and that's good to go. And now it's 30 years later, and you have 2 kids, 3 kids, 5 kids, and you've been married twice, and and things have changed. Things have
gotten a little bit more complicated.
Yeah. Yeah, so the whole idea of not having a plan at all, and again, we talk about this in our practice all the time. Like, when people think of, they get intimidated by the whole idea of an estate plan. Like, oh God, here we go. I gotta get a will. And then someone said I need a healthcare proxy. And then, I need that power of attorney. And then I need my trust. And then I don't really know what a trust is. And then it's like, and I don't really know what it does. So then it becomes this overwhelming thing, and everybody's like, I'm gonna put that off until I have to do it or until I never do it.
So I did a presentation this morning on celebrity probate, which will be available for anybody who wants to see it on video if you like, and we'll probably do some live versions of it. Okay?
Did you use me as an example?
Oh yeah, you're a celebrity. Yep. And so, I gave it to a phenomenal group of professionals in the care community, if you will, and some lawyers and some financial planners as part of a networking group, and some people who work at communities in your community, some assisted living facilities.
Sounds like your book club.
Things like that. So, but one of the questions that came up was somebody said to me, Jay, quick question, does everybody need a plan? And and I thought to myself, you know what? Let's kind of game this out a little bit. Yes, everybody does need a plan, and I kind of walked this person through all of the different things that you just mentioned, and I said, when you're younger, exactly what you said, you need a will. Then you have some kids. Now your planning gets a little more complicated. Then your kids grow up. They can be part of your plan, so your planning gets a little bit more complicated again. And then at some point you realize, I've won the game. I'm in my forever home. I downsized. We're never leaving this place. We have a place on the Cape, a place up in Maine, a place up in New Hampshire. We want these to go to the kids. We're not going to run out of money. You start that whole kind of final chapter of your estate planning. So yes, having a plan is important, and your plan can change, just like the plans that you guys do for people are going to change, and it's going to change as you change. Build in the flexibility.
You're already getting ahead to number 2, and I like
What's
that.
number 2?
Well, number 2 is not updating your plan.
Whoa,
But let me back up to number 1 really quickly. So with number 1, so it says, not having a plan. The bottom, at the end of the day, if you don't have a plan, so let's say you live, you die, and you have some assets to pass on, and you have absolutely no plan. Those assets will get passed on. I guarantee you are not taking those with you.
Excellent point.
Yep. So they will get passed on, and they will get passed on at the decision made by the probate court. So and it will be a judge that will determine, based on all of this, whatever evidence that comes forward to him, or whatever people come forward, or maybe nobody comes forward, and a judge will determine, okay, this is where your assets are going to go. So if you're happy with that, then that's fine. Then you can.
Well, but you bring up a great point, by the way. If that's your plan, that is a plan. Like you're talking about having no plan.
You made the decision not to have a plan.
You made a conscious decision to say, look, to your point, I can't take it with me. I don't care what happens after I'm gone. It will go where it goes, and it's somebody else's problem. Now, the question, of course, becomes, whose problem is it going to be, right? Like, for example, if you don't care where your house goes, well, somebody has to take over the idea of getting rid of that house, because you don't just turn around and go back to the town and say to the town, hey, my mom passed away. I know she has a house here, and we don't want it, so we're just giving it back to you guys, right?
Yeah, that's
not how it works. I mean, eventually that could happen. They could take it for a tax title and all this other stuff, but you're basically saying, I want them to do it. So to your point, there's a plan. If you don't want to put a plan together, and it might not be your plan, but it's going to be somebody's plan, it might as well be yours. Right,
it's going to be somebody else's problem. Now, on the case of celebrity estate planning, were Prince to just say he didn't care, and it eventually, like, his estate came my way, kind of with the music and Paisley Park and all that place, that would be a problem that I would be willing to deal with.
So Prince didn't have a plan.
Right.
No plan, no will, 6 siblings, 2 of them half-siblings, a $300-ish million estate. Paisley Park, which they've turned into a museum. Why do they turn it into a museum? Because they need the revenue from the museum to pay bills, because nobody has been determined as of this date, Prince died 5 years ago, to have been named as his heir. And in addition to Paisley Park and all the royalties and stuff like that, Prince also has a vault, I'm sure they've opened it, that contains enough music that Prince could put out an album every year for the next 100 years. Somebody needs to manage that mess. And by the way, these are people that are surrounded by what are supposed to be the best and brightest from an advice perspective, right? Agents, lawyers, people in the radio business, people in the recording industry. People who understand the industry and the fact that you have real value. And the other thing is that this will get taken care of, and it will get taken care of using your money. Nobody volunteers to pay for this out of pocket. Your money pays for all of this, and so that potentially is part of the problem. So have a plan. No plan is not a plan, and talk to Prince.
and talk to Prince were he here to
Were
talk
he
to.
here.
All right, so the bottom line is you need a plan, and even if it's just a basic will, right? You can start there. You can start with a basic will, and then of course, as things become a little bit more, complicated or a little more, there's more pieces involved. Then there's the standard plan that we'll prescribe to all of our clients, and you'll prescribe to your clients, and again, there's the standard plan, and then every situation.
Well, and there's a basic set of documents that we like to see clients have, because even if they don't want to put together a plan, the people who might get stuck doing the work, they do want you to have a plan, right? If I'm going to be your executor and you want me to be your executor, but you don't want to write it down, as a good friend who would do that job, I'm like, well, let's make it easy for me. I don't mind doing the work, but can you at least make it easy for me to drive the car, right? Like if you tell me here's the car and you don't give me the keys, I can't do a lot, right? So make it easy for me.
You don't give me the steering wheel?
That's right. So make it easy for me to help you out. If you're not going to do that, a basic set of documents that we would help a client out with can provide enough flexibility and give somebody enough authority to do a lot of things that would basically become the framework of a plan. So at least have that discussion.
Okay, all right. So that's number one. Have a plan. We touched on number two of not updating your plan.
Please update your plan.
Yeah, we've talked about this several thousand times, about how your plan, as your life changes, your plan needs to change as well. Things change. If your marriage situation changes, if you have more children, if you have, if you become a caretaker of somebody else's children, or your own parents, or things like that. Whatever your situation, or if you have maybe you have a child who has a disability or something like that. All those things, as you move through life, you have to make sure that your plan supports it. One of the big examples we give is if somebody, when you have a young family and you say we're going to name the caretakers of our children, like the guardians of our children, and that's listed specifically in our will. As your children get older or as relationships change, those things could change, right? So if your guardian is, say, your brother, when your kids are little, but then say your brother marries, the Wicked Witch of the West, and you're not really comfortable, or your brother decides that or comes and tells you, says, I can't do it, or financially, they can't really support. So it's important to kind of review and update your plan. And do you have to do it like every 6 months? No, it's not one of those things. But
no, it could be, but it won't be. It probably won't be.
Yeah. So, but this is why it's important to kind of, we always kind of encourage. Again, we encourage people because this is what we do. But we say, look, it's good to be connected with somebody that you can call and say, hey, here's some things that have changed, or when you're just doing your regular review, here's some things that have happened to me over the past year. Do I need to make any changes? And then that could spur more conversation and say, well, maybe it could. Why don't you come in and we'll talk about it? And if it is, then we'll make the changes, and if it isn't, then we'll leave things as
well. And the changes could be minor. The changes, like we had a phone call from somebody this week who said, here's what's going on. Since the last time you did this plan, these are the things that I think we need to tweak. And we dive into the plan, we roll our sleeves up, we look at a couple things, and we say, look, I think the way it's set up is good. I think we've covered a lot of the things that you just mentioned. There are a couple of aspects of this plan that I would like to polish up. Why don't we meet? We'll go over it. We'll fix it up so that there's no question, and we'll move forward. And he was a visionary client in the sense that he said, look, I just want to make sure that there's no problems if something happens. And I said, I wish everybody would kind of have a little bit of foresight like that, because everything looks really good. And that was really peace of mind for him, because he said, I'm the one that's going to have to do it. And I said, no, you're good. Everybody's on the same page, and let's take care of it. So you're right. Have a plan and update your plan when and if needed. Call your attorney and ask them. That's what you paid them for.
Okay. Moving on to number 3, and then we'll take a break after number 3. So number 3, because then we're going to get to number 4, right? So number 3 is make sure in your plan that you at least consider the concept or potential concept of disability and or long-term care. So when you're doing your estate plan, and especially as if this is an estate plan that you've been kind of in for a long time,
sure.
And like we say, like our plans all go out to age 110. So that's a long time. That's a long road that you're going to be going on. So we want to say, at least to talk about or at least understand like what could happen potential if somebody becomes disabled, right? And that would be probably from an unfortunate accident or
Sure.
an illness or something like that. Or if eventually somebody ends up into a long-term care situation, how that is going to affect your plan. Now, does that mean that you have to make decisions and make, changes, when you're 55 years old? Probably not, but it's something that you can't just ignore it until, because how many times have you seen in your practice where people ignore it and then they call you and like, Jay, oh my God, my mother's going into a long-term care facility and she's got money, what can I do? And it's almost like at that point, it's kind of, there's, you're limited as what your capabilities of doing anything about it.
You bring up a great point. Unfortunately, and we don't say this to be cavalier about it, but we'll say to people all the time, the passing away part is the easy part. I hate to say it that way, but you know what? That's it, right? There's no clock ticking on money and resources. Unfortunately, if somebody passes away, the next path of where things go is relatively clear, okay? But you bring up a great point. Disability and long-term care planning. Those are the questions that people come in and say, it's expensive. I don't know what my options are. I'm trying to manage the care of my loved one. I'm trying to manage the disability issues around what my loved one's dealing with, and I just don't know where to go. And by the way, those things could take a decade to deal with somebody's care, somebody's incapacity, somebody who suffers from dementia, some cognitive decline, some type of physical decline. Those things play out over a long, long, long period of time. The passing away part is, I got to get somebody appointed as the executor, assuming there's no fighting. That's a relatively black and white process. These disability and care issues where you're leaving, and we've run into this time and time again where somebody says, I think I did some planning, and then we look at the planning and it's not great.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it at that. It's not great, and we really have to get in there and
it hasn't included that. It hasn't kind of included like the contingencies of, because think about
Well, you know what it was? It was designed for death. The plan was designed for death, and now we have to solve incapacity. They're two separate issues, and they do different things, and the planning does different things.
Yeah, and that could affect the whole progress or the whole outcome of the plan, because as we know, if somebody becomes disabled and they're no longer able to earn income, that changes your financial situation. If somebody goes into a long-term care situation and they have to pay for it, or because Medicaid, they won't qualify for Medicaid, that affects your financial situation, which could affect, your overall, your concept. Because again, all your estate plan is what you want to see happen after you go.
That's right.
Your life's work, where you want to see that go. If there's anything left of it, then that's what your plan does. So, you're the next, like while you're in the great beyond, what you've left behind, that's your legacy.
Well, and what we tell everybody is, look, there's three parts to your plan. There's the probate while you're alive part that deals specifically with incapacity, okay? There's the probate when you pass away part. That's the part that everybody's very familiar with, wills, trusts, how do I get my estate to my heirs? And the third part of all of our conversations is what happens if somebody gets sick and needs long-term care. That's the third piece, and that can be done any number of ways. Some of them very conventional, some of them very not conventional. We talk about it all the time. You talk about it all the time. You talk about long-term care insurance. We talk about Medicaid planning. We talk about whether or not it's even in the cards for you. So we really bring all three of those aspects of your plan to the table, because they are three distinctly different approaches to your planning.
There you go. All right, so we're going to take a quick break.
Wait for it.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back to number four. Number four. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
We're back. Money in the Law, My FM 101.3.
His headquarters over there, right near my house.
Yeah.
That's like I always see cars in and out of there.
Talking about Christian's world global domination headquarters over there.
He
sits over there during the day with a hairless cat. He's a hairless cat, and he just spends his whole day planning HCAT stuff. That's what he does. That's right.
I am going to want
couple of henchmen. Couple of henchmen. That's right. We
were talking about that. We were like, where did those guys come from, right? I always, and I don't know why I think about it, but so think of every movie where there's henchmen, right? The henchmen that are like and it doesn't matter. There's always bad guys, and then there's like the bad guys that are like and a lot of these movies they're all jacked up. They're like
ex-military.
Like, they're like prior military,
CIA, Black Ops,
right? And you're like. And you want to say to them, okay, let me just ask you, what was your deal to join this? Like, what are you getting out of this?
They get paid money.
Oh yeah, so they get, but do you get paid enough money to like to go toe to toe with like the Hulk? Do you get paid enough money to do that?
Sure you do.
Because I would be like,
How much to fight Superman? How much to fight Superman?
Right. How much do I get paid? And what are my benefits? And what do they talk about on their time off? Right.
Yeah.
Like what are you guys doing on your day? Oh yeah, my day off. Yeah. Listen, I'm off Saturday, and I'm going to be.
They get a schedule. They get a schedule.
Yeah,
They have to go to their boss and say, "Hey, boss, look, I get a bridal shower on Tuesday. I can't make the bank robbery. I'm not scheduled to work the bank robbery."
Because I know most of them are like, they live in like some one-room apartment and all they do is sharpen their knives all day. But there's
they clean their guns. They clean
one
their
out
guns.
of 100 is like a guy who goes home to his family and like his wife doesn't really know what he does.
That's
right.
She thinks he's insurance
Yeah,
salesman.
yeah.
That's right.
Hey, honey, I'm home. Yeah, where'd you get the black eye? I slipped getting out of the car. And
Walking to a door. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I'm a henchman. What's a henchman? It's on their resume. So from 2000 to 2010, I was a henchman.
That's a henchman.
Duties
in
included.
Hydra.
Duties included. Yep, that's right.
Duties
that's right.
including supporting and doing anything the Red Skull told me to do.
Fighting interstellar super beings. Yep, that's right. That's absolutely right. Yep.
Went toe to toe with the Hulk twice.
That's right. Yep. Didn't
He
win.
punched me
But
through.
what was? Hey, Mr. Henchman, what was the toughest thing that you've ever had to do professionally? This is the interview, right? Well, one time I fought a gigantic green guy, and
He threw me through a brick wall.
Yep. And I learned a lot. What I learned from that was planning is very important, and I learned that I'm a real people person. Yep.
And I learned that that if I have to be immobile for 6 to 8 months, I can do that in a full body cast.
I found out that going through a brick wall, it didn't take me out. I was fine. I jumped up and ran and came right back at him. Crazy. Yeah. All right, waiting for the big number 4
All right,
here.
so here we go.
Number 4 in the list. This
So
is a big one.
number 4, and this is intriguing because oftentimes it kind of gets blown over, and we could spend a whole show on it. But I just want to. It's one of those things. But we'll touch on it. Is estate tax. So so we talk. So when you're doing your plan, is you have to make sure you consider estate tax. And then, so of course the federal estate tax, it's $22 million. The exemption is it's for most people.
Pretty good.
For most people, you won't even come close to the estate tax exemption.
Correct.
You won't
At the
even
federal
come-
level.
At the federal level. And the federal numbers are big, right? So they're big numbers in that if you do qualify or if you do fall into that situation where you are going to have to pay federal estate tax, then that's a significant tax. And again, that estate tax is paid on everything above your exemption. So if your initial exemption, if your joint exemption is $22 million between you and your wife, then anything above that $22 million, that's what you're going to pay estate tax on. So let's say, if you have, say, a $30 million estate, do the math, you're going to pay estate tax on $8 million. And that could go up to 50% of that number, depending upon where you fall into that on the chart. So the federal estate tax is one thing that we address it and we say, are you going to be in a federal estate tax? And if they are, then like, wow, you're almost like you're so lucky. Like, oh, I'm so yeah. I mean,
so-and-so,
your
you.
biggest problem in life is you're going to pay federal estate tax. You have so much money. Right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
We're like starstruck financial planners. Like, oh my God. Like,
let me get the good. Let me get the good China.
How many clients do you guys ever pay in federal estate tax? I have 4. So most people don't. Most people don't fall into that situation. But the Massachusetts, and again, we'll talk about Massachusetts, our state, our Commonwealth, is that Massachusetts also has an estate tax.
Yeah.
There is an estate tax, and that estate tax, the threshold is $1 million.
$1 million.
And back in the day, back when you and I were kids growing up, I don't think I knew anybody who had $1 million. I mean, maybe, but
it was a lot of money back then.
I mean, being a millionaire, who wants to be a millionaire? But guess what? In today's day and age, when you look at all of the things that contribute to your overall assets, most people that are their estate is worth over $1 million.
Pretty close. You put a piece of real estate and a decent sized 401k in there, and bang, you're on your way.
But don't forget a life insurance policy, right? Don't forget if you have a term life insurance policy
couple of bucks in the bank,
for $1 million. Guess what? You're over your estate is going to owe a Massachusetts estate tax. So that's something that, again, are you going to let taxes wag the dog? Are you going to say, listen, we're going to do all this crazy stuff in order to like reduce or eliminate our estate tax, and then and kind of put ourselves in a position where we're really restrictive with our resources or restrictive with our assets? Maybe you will. Most of the time you won't. But it has to be something that you have to consider, and you have to recognize it and understand it. Is there anything that I can do to maybe, alleviate some of the estate tax burden? Maybe there is. But to just ignore it and just be like, hey, yeah, whatever, we're just going to pay whatever. And then you say, okay, that's great. But if your estate tax, let's say your estate taxes, make up a number, say it's $50,000 or $100,000, what you owe for your estate tax, that's money that has to come from somewhere, right? And
it does.
And if all of your, let's say all of your assets are kind of in real estate, or you don't have that kind of liquidity, or the way you built your estate plan, you say, well, I'm going to give my one son the house that he lives in, so he'll get that, and then my daughter will get my $500,000 brokerage account.
Sure.
But oh, by the way, the estate owes $1 million or $100,000 estate tax. So
right.
Where's that cash coming from?
So a couple of things on the estate tax. So there are some relatively simple or streamlined things that we would talk about with a client that we can do that mitigate some of this, right? Some of them are very
right.
easy, very simple. They involve some work and they involve thinking about things a certain way, but they're available, right? And they don't have to get too complicated. Some of them are very, very straightforward. The number you mentioned it a minute ago, the number one question that we ask our clients when we talk about the estate tax is, do you care?
Right.
And I'm not being cavalier about that question, right? We tell people all the time, it's never a check that you're going to write, okay? It's kind of like complaining about, the seats that you gave somebody tickets to for a baseball game that you don't attend,
yeah.
right? Oh, that's terrible. I can't believe it. Why? Were you affected by that? Did you go to the game? No, I didn't go to the game. I just gave them the seats to the
right.
game. But I didn't go, so I'm
yeah.
complaining about the seats. I mean,
yeah, it's like complaining about the birthday present.
That's right. Yeah, but but it's even worse than that because it's your present, right?
Yeah.
You gave it to somebody,
right.
and then you complained about it, right?
You're moaning about it.
Yeah. So it's not something that we're cavalier about, but we will say to people, let's think about it. You mentioned it a minute ago. At the state level at Mass, it's not as onerous as it is at the federal level. If you go over $1 million, unlike the federal plan where you pay on the overage, in Mass they go all the way back to dime one, and then they start the tax on that. It might work out to be, $75,000, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, based on the size of your estate. What we have found in many cases, and maybe we're not talking to the right people, right? But what we have found in cases where we ask this of people, do you care about the estate tax? The answer in many cases for us has been, wait a minute, so you're telling me if something happens to me, my wife or my husband, they're not going to pay the tax because spouses don't pay. They get a full marital deduction. So all your money goes to your spouse.
Yeah, unlimited.
All your money goes to your wife.
Deduction, yeah.
Nobody pays any estate tax on that. Okay, that's fine. That's okay. Now the tax kicks in when it goes from the surviving spouse or a single individual down to the children. And what we have found more often than not is people's approach to this has been, look, if I'm leaving my kids $3 million, for example, I'm not losing any sleep. I'm not rolling over in my grave if they got to write a $200,000 check.
Yeah, that's the price of doing business,
right?
right?
That's, first of all, it's the price of doing business, first of all. Second of all, they're getting way more than I ever got, right? and it was never, and so they're already way ahead of the curve. So I'm not willing to complicate my planning in an effort to save money that I'm never going to pay for people who are already getting a pile of money anyway.
Yeah.
Now that's one philosophy, right? It's not everybody's philosophy. And some people will say, no, I don't want to give the government a nickel more than I think that they should get. I want to know what my estate planning options are to avoid or to mitigate that. And there are some planning options. Going down those more convoluted planning paths costs money. It costs money in that the planning gets more complicated and you're going to have to potentially pay your advisor, pay your attorney more money to develop a more complicated plan for you. You may have to pay for products to help mitigate or offset the cost of these taxes. Those products, those strategies come with the price, and your plan needs probably more babysitting, which means you're going to have to pay for more updates and things like that. And we have had people who come in, guns blazing, and say, I do not want to pay that extra $250,000. I don't want my kids to pay that extra $250,000 in taxes. I don't want to do it. And then they go, how much is the tax planning going to cost? and then we tell them what the tax planning is going to cost, which is a infinitesimal amount compared to what they're going to pay in the taxes that they just complained about. And then they complain about the increased fee. So they go, I don't want to pay $250 to the government, but I don't want to pay
It's a great
you.
sales strategy.
I don't want to pay you $10,000 to
Yeah.
develop a more complicated plan.
We're gonna
I'm not going to pay $10 to save $250. I don't like that formula.
I mean, that's almost like shooting fish in a barrel right there.
And that's
for
not
your
a quote,
guy.
by the way.
'Cause
That's
you're
not, that's not what we charge. I'm just giving you a ballpark number, right?
$250,000. Listen, normally we charged, we normally charge 10% of that, but we're going to cut it down. We're going to charge you $19,999, and that's there.
To
you
save
go.
your
To save
$250.
it,
I'm not doing that.
you do it, yeah.
I'm
yeah,
not doing that.
Yeah.
Right, so you're going to give me 10, and I'm going to give you $250. You don't want to do
Yeah.
that?
No.
No, I'm not doing that. That's highway robbery.
But the other thing, the other part of that is oftentimes when you do those kind of more complicated or more intricate estate planning, that you could also put some limitations or put some restrictions on the availability of your money. Am I not correct?
Sure. Yeah.
So you lose kind of some of that. We always talk about flexibility when we on the show. We talk about how it's great to be financially flexible and kind of be able to go in whatever direction that kind of life takes you. And so when you start making those decisions, if you start using things like an irrevocable trust, or you start, kind of gifting money away or doing things like that immediately puts some restrictions on some things that you otherwise may not have done. Because again, the estate plan is for when you're done. The estate plan is for when
you're at the finish line.
Yeah, no, you're not at the finish line. You've crossed the finish line, and you're like in the tent. You're in the tent. You got the little silver space blanket over you.
The Mylar blanket.
Yeah, you're done. You're not.
You're in the stoppage time. You're over.
You're not part of the. You're not part of the show anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a picture of you that's there, right? And maybe maybe there's a
black ribbon on it.
Maybe a great story, but you're gone, right? So if you're going to put if you say I'm not going to pay that estate, but I'm going to save myself $100,000, but I'm going to restrict my ability to get at my money, or I'm going to gift some of it away, or I'm going to give it to somebody who's not going to appreciate it, or is going to split, and then you're going to do that now. That's going to affect you may live another 30 or 40 years. Like, man, I wish I didn't do that back back when I was doing estate planning.
Yeah, tons of strategies, things to think about. Again, there's nothing wrong with saying, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care.
So the pitfall is from our list is that you don't at least kind of acknowledge it, right?
Yep.
And because what happens is a lot of people don't acknowledge it, and then when they're settling like their parents' estate or something, and then the government Massachusetts calls up and says, hey, you owe us $150,000, then like what?
Well, you know what? That's a great point. If you go to your kids and you say, guys, I made a conscious decision here. All right. You're going to inherit a sizable estate from me and mom, or the second of the two of us, whatever it looks like, right? And we've made a conscious decision. We don't care about the estate tax because you're going to be well ahead of the game. We're fine with it. We don't care about it. It's a conscious decision that we're making. Or we've done one or two things to sort of mitigate the number. We're not going to get rid of it completely, but we don't care and don't bellyache. It's our money. You're getting it. You're already benefiting to the nth degree.
And most people, if you're at that level, if you're having that conversation, you've already figured where that estate tax is coming from.
If you can have that conversation, your kids go, yeah, no problem. We get it, Mom. We get it, Dad. God bless you. You did a phenomenal job. You raised mature adults.
Yeah, but in your plan, in your trust, there's probably a specific line that says, said any estate tax paid to the state of Massachusetts will come from this account. And
you can do that. You can absolutely do that.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of strategies to take care of this. Some of them easy, some of them complicated. You just need to understand that many of them come at a cost, and it's your decision to decide how complicated do I want to make this thing. Maybe not very, but maybe you do. Not a big deal.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, fly through the next 6 because they're easy. They're easy to understand.
Easy stuff.
Everything's
Estate
easy.
planning.
Everything's easy for you.
We make it easy.
We're making it easy for you. Don't go away. We'll be right back. That means you, Kaharich, because I know you're listening.
Nice. And we're back. Money in the Law, IFM 101.3. Jay Marsden with the Marsden Law Group. Even Christian found it fascinating.
He's like,
he does have you know why he does have a federal estate tax problem.
Right.
He's talked to me about it before the show. He said, can I bend your ear for a sec, Jay? Nobody knows this, but I own about $6 billion worth of Bitcoin, and I got some questions.
Bitcoin, which I just bought some property.
And he was complaining about my fee quote. He was complaining about my price. I always do. It never stops. It never stops.
Yeah, so I bought Bitcoin back when it was like $800. It was like, oh my God, really?
Doing okay.
Yeah,
This thing kind of did well for me.
I only bought 100 of them, right?
Yep, yep.
Yeah, and then I bought some property down on the water, like in that waterfront property down in Boston.
Remember the seaport?
Yeah,
remember,
seaport.
Remember they were giving that stuff away like
Yeah,
20 years
yeah,
ago? I
yeah.
picked up a couple of acres.
So
myself
me
down
and
there.
my dad went down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep
Yep.
the
Went
days
to an
down
open
there,
house.
yeah.
Went to an open house. Driving by one day, thought we'd pop in,
Right.
make an offer.
Right. All right,
Let's lowball. Let's see
we'll
what
buy
happens.
a couple of these, right? We'll buy a couple of
Yeah,
these.
whatever.
Yeah, here we
Whatevs.
are.
Whatevs.
And here
All right,
we are.
6 more to go.
All right, 6 more to go.
we
Okay.
go.
So, number 5 is improper ownership. So when we talk about improper ownership of like property and things,
Oh, yeah.
so the idea of you want to make sure that if you have particularly if you have property, you want to make sure that the ownership, like the titling of it reflects your estate, because you may think that I'm gonna I own this and then it's going to get passed to my heirs the way I think it is. Particularly if you're in like a partnership situation or something like that, you have to make sure that that's all clearly articulated and understood in all of your documentation.
Well, and here's where the ownership piece is critical, and we see this a lot in a lot of our meetings with people. Depending on how your property is titled, that property may not pass through your estate plan. The titling of your property may drive where that money goes.
Right.
So, for example, you own a brokerage account, or you own a bank account, or you own some real estate with one of your children, and it was done for what always starts off as convenience purposes only. And then what happens is the way you own that property sort of gets forgotten about, if you will, because when you start adding stuff up, you assume that it's all yours. And the way it's titled means that it's not only not all yours, but if something happens to you, it goes according to the way it's titled. So people will have a will that says, I leave everything to all my kids equally, and then they own property with those kids in a different way, and all of that stuff does not go, potentially, according to your estate plan. It has its own separate path, and that's fine. You just want to make sure you understand and know what that path is and why. Yeah. That's all. That's it.
And your kids and your when you have your discussion, like with your beneficiaries, or if you have the discussion, or maybe you don't, but you say you know how this is going to work out.
Right.
So you know that I have a joint account with my daughter. So she will, if I pass away, she will have that whole account. So in my estate plan, that I've taken that into consideration as far as how I want everything to be distributed.
And the reason that's important is you may even out or balance or sort of reconfigure your estate plan based on the way you own these other assets,
exactly.
Right? You might say, look, I have so-and-so is joint owner of our place on the Cape, because he's always down there, he's doing the maintenance and the upkeep, he likes the beach sticker, so I'll leave him the Cape House, for example.
That's a good deal.
Because he's going to get it, but then I might leave my entire retirement account, my entire IRA to my other child, and that is what evens out the playing field. And the other thing to keep in mind is, if that's your plan, well, you talked about earlier, you got to revisit your plan, because the assets go like this. Assets go like this,
that's
right?
why you need to update it.
Cape House goes this way.
Yeah.
The retirement account goes this way because you're spending a lot of money, and you got to make sure you keep if you want to keep the balance in place.
When Christian
you
and
revisit
Keith
it.
bought that set of 40 condos down in the Seaport.
He got the third floor, which is
back in
and then
1989.
Yep. He got the condos, and he got the mezzanine, which isn't as valuable as the condos.
A little bit.
Crazy.
All right.
Yep.
Okay. Number 6, lacking liquidity. So we addressed this a little bit. So if anytime you settle an estate, there are going to be some costs involved. If you're going through probate, there'll be some probate costs. If you're not going through probate, there could be some costs, as we addressed, potentially a federal or state estate tax. And there's going to be things like this. Like if there's property, you have to kind of pay bills. You have to pay the real estate tax. There has to be some way to kind of pay this money. Or maybe if you're going to sell a property and it needs to have the septic needs to be fixed, or the roof needs to be fixed, or something like that. Like all of those things, in order to kind of make the estate happen the way you want, you're going to need money and liquidity. And if your money is just in the real estate, and you don't have the liquid cash to do it, and you don't have the person who is the executor of said estate or the trustee of the trust, they don't understand how it's all supposed to happen, then you could run into a problem.
Well, yeah, and there's 2 areas that you run into on the liquidity side. One of them is liquidity for taxes, depending on the size of the estate. If your estate is in the range where there's going to be some taxes due, if there's no cash or no liquidity available, stuff starts to have to get sold, because you'll be shocked to hear that the government doesn't really care that you don't have any cash on hand.
Right.
All right, they don't see it that way. So if you don't have cash for liquidity to pay some of these bills, it's got to come from somewhere. That's the first thing. And we hear all the time, people say, I want to start distributing these assets. I want to give them out to everybody. Time out. Pay your tax bill first. Don't be giving it out, because once you give it out, you'll never get it back. That's where liquidity can be a problem. And the other part is, even if you're not subject to estate tax, even if you're under the $1 million threshold, houses cost money, even if there's nobody living in them, right? Property tax, maintenance, upkeep, insurance, the lawn, anything you want to do, fix the septic. That stuff costs money. And if all your assets are tied up or are non-liquid, or you can't get at them, those bills still have to get paid. Somebody owns a car, they took a car loan out, those loans got to get paid. When you don't have that, that makes it very, very challenging.
And what if the beneficiaries have to, so let's say you have 3 beneficiaries, and you say, hey, listen, we need to, $10,000 to pay the roof. Everybody's kicking in money, and one of them's like, I don't have $3,000 to give you.
One of them says, I don't care.
Yeah.
Forget that I don't have it. They got it because they inherited it. They say, look, that's not my problem.
Yeah,
that's a mom and dad problem. That's not a me problem. There's dynamics. People have it. There's always, not everybody's getting along. So those are issues. So again, we're not talking about always needing massive amounts of liquidity for taxes. When I was at Fidelity, we talked about the issue about liquidity and estate taxes, and that was an ongoing concern. And then when I went out on my own and became a private attorney, I found out that just paying some bills for 6 months in some of these estates was a real problem.
Yep.
So liquidity doesn't have to be a huge problem. You either have the money or you don't have the money. Either way, when you don't have it, it's a headache.
Yeah, and you have to, and it has to be part of your plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's go through the last 4. All right, so number 7, when you're doing your estate tax, make sure you take into account income tax. And we talked about the income tax because as an estate settles, there's still going to be an income tax owed for that estate tax year. The idea of income tax in that, when you start passing on as particularly qualified accounts and the tax implications that are going to happen, so if you say, well, I'm going to give I have $100,000 in a 401k and I have $100,000 in a joint account. My daughter will get the joint account. My son will get the 401k. Those are 2 different accounts with 2 different income tax implications.
Yeah, make it easy. Do yourself a favor. I don't care how great you think you are with taxes. These are transition events. So in the year that somebody passes, the year that you're settling an estate, things like that, call the accountant, call somebody, have them help you out, have them manage you through this. You can always go back to doing it yourself later down the road, but have somebody come in and manage these transition events.
All right, number 8. Minor children as a beneficiary. So oftentimes we have, particularly like life insurance, or even like in your will, you say, I leave everything to my kids, and my kids are 5 and 7. Guess what? 5 and 7-year-olds can't sign contracts. 5 and 7-year-olds can't open bank accounts. 5 and 7-year-olds can't get money out of an ATM machine. Well, maybe they can if they figure it out, right?
They can't reach the counter at like Fidelity or at the bank.
But neither can 13-year-olds or 17-year-olds, right?
That's right.
Or on the flip side of that, an 18-year-old can inherit money.
Well, and you may not want your 18-year-old to inherit money. So they're not much different than a 17-year-old.
Other than the fact that they can join the army, and other than the fact that they can inherit a 401k or a new house, or be the beneficiary, or open a bank account with $500,000 they got from a life insurance policy.
Yeah, plan for the minors and plan for who would be in charge of the minors. They don't have to be the same people. Just think about it.
So the guardian of your minors is a big thing. Okay, so number 9. When you're doing your estate planning, not including charity. So again, you may not be charitably inclined.
It's up to you. It's a personal choice.
You may not be, but you may say, hey, you know what? I've always wanted to leave some money for this particular. So like in my father's case, the American Heart Association was a big charity that that my mother was very. So we always wanted to make sure that something was going to go to them. But again, if you haven't planned it, it's not built into your plan, you're not going to be able to do it.
One caveat, leaving money to charities does make things more complicated because the Attorney General's office has to get involved when there's charitable beneficiaries. Sounds like you're doing a good thing. It makes the probate process a little bit more prickly, a little bit more complicated, a little bit more drawn out. My suggestion is give during your life and give generously.
Yeah.
Make it easy.
And nothing worse than prickly probate. And then last but certainly not least, we just touched on this, the beneficiary on retirement plans. So one of the tax changes in the changes in the tax law is that if I'm a non-spouse and I inherit a qualified account, an IRA or a 401k, I have to spend that within the next 10 years.
Yeah.
I have 10 years to exhaust that account. Where in the old days, I had my life expectancy. I could my stretch IRA would allow me to stretch it out for my entire lifetime. Not anymore. Now it's 10 years. So that's something to take into consideration as well. So when you're talking about, okay, if, when you want to like make everything even or make
That's right.
everything distributed where it feels even, understand some of the rules and some of the rules and regulations that go along with leaving somebody part like an IRA.
And your retirement account is an easy, very good place to do some of this true up and do some of this rebalancing in your portfolio. It's easy to take the account. It's easy to change the percentages. You can probably do it online. So it's a very, very good vehicle for sort of estate rebalancing in your portfolio to make sure people get what you want them to get. Very easy to monitor, very easy to change, very easy to execute.
Right, and it's not the end of the world. If someone needs to spend it within 10 years, that's fine.
They spend it. That's fine.
They're going to spend it.
You'll help them.
10 years is a long time.
It is. Longer than you think.
Yeah. All right. That's it. We got through the list.
We're done. Great job.
10 years, 10 points,
10 questions.
10 mistakes.
That's right.
10 questions, $10. All right. We'll see everybody next week. Money in the Law.
You got it.
Yeah, Money in the Law. MyFM 101.3. Have a great week.
Stay cool.